How we doing, guys? It's Marco with Higgins Energy, and today we are going to be reviewing Harman's touchscreen. Any touchscreen stove does come with this little cheat sheet. It goes over pretty much any necessity that you would need of how to control the stove, turn it on, turn it off, set a schedule, and we'll go over it in a little more detail right now. So, if we look at the screen, this is our home screen. The top left is your on-off. The temperature in the middle is what the room is currently reading. The temperature on the right is how you would want to set it. Your date and time are on the top right. We have it currently set, so it's telling you how many pellets are in the hopper and how much you use per day. On the bottom is the control panel that shows you what components are working when the stove is on. Bottom left is whisper mode. Green is on, gray is off. Whisper mode will cut the capacity of all components in the stove down to 10%, giving you a quieter stove. And then the three lines right there are how you get into the menu settings. So first, if you hit that button, you could change your bird mode option. So right now we have it in room sensing. You could also set it to constant burn. That would change how the front looks. Rather than having a temperature here, you just set the flame height. 1 would be your lowest flame, 7 would be your highest flame. That's it. The stove will run until you either turn it off or until it runs out of fuel. Most people with this technology do use the room sensing mode. There is also a wireless room sensor, so instead of reading right here at the stove in the back, you could have it set up to about 30 feet away and the temperature will read there instead of at the stove. So next, we're gonna go back in the menu. Anytime you clean the stove, you will want to go into cleaning prompts, and it'll have a certain percentage built up. Did you just scrape the burn pot? If so, click that. Did you empty the ash pan? If so, click that. If you did everything, you could hit total clean and it'll move it all back to 0. Diagnostics is more so a screen where you could see how the stove is running, what's going on. Usually a homeowner wouldn't need to use that. It's more so for us technicians, but it never hurts to know what's in the stove. The next button right here is your feed limit. This will change how fast the auger is spinning once flame has been established in your stove. It's usually set around 65%. If you need to, you could turn that up or down. The igniter, it comes automatically on. The only reason you would ever want to disable this is if your igniter did die, you call your technicians, they can't come out for a few weeks, you're in the middle of heating season. Rather than having a couple 100-pound paperweight in your house, you could disable the igniter and then you just light the burn pot yourself with a torch. Everything else will run how it needs to. It just pulls the igniter out of the circuitry. The room fan, you can run it in automatic and then it will regulate on its own. Otherwise, if you want to set it, you can set the speed and it'll always run that way. You can set a schedule in the stove. It will be on that piece of paper exactly how to do it. I'm going to show you that you can go and set every day on its own, Sunday through Saturday, 7 days a week. You could set it to turn on, to turn off when you're going to work or leaving the house, have it turn on again, and then turn off for the night. This test mode is really handy. You could test all the major components, the room fan or distribution fan, the combustion or exhaust fan, the feed or auger motor, and lastly your igniter. If you know a fan is making noise, but you can't really pinpoint what to tell your technician what they need to replace, you just push the button and it'll test that component. Page 2. So here are your home screen options. I like to show the dashboard, which are those bottom components, and then the fuel gauges, which on the home screen was this left part. So that is the fuel gauge. These are the dashboards. The last option is you can set a low fuel warning flash, and what that'll do is the light that's inside your hopper will continuously flash when your fuel gets low. Screen brightness, you set it to whatever's comfortable. We always do 80/10 on our installs. The date and time, you could go and change. Otherwise, if you ever have a power outage and that resets with the newest Harman update, you don't even have to go there. You could just click on the top right and do it that way from the home screen. Fuel calibration is something, as a homeowner, you really wouldn't ever need. It's more so for the technicians. If your stove is having an issue keeping track of the fuel you're using, that's what we would use to get it in there. Now, if you have young children or people touching your stove and you don't want them messing with your schedules, your settings and all that, you could lock the screen. If you speak a different language or are from somewhere that uses Celsius instead of Fahrenheit, that's what those two options are for. On page 2, the last option is your wireless sensor, which I mentioned earlier. It's literally a matter of clicking that. You would hit enable communication. As long as there's batteries in the sensor, it'll tell you when it's connected. That little green OK comes up. Then you hit select sensor, and that's how you know it's reading from that up to 30 feet away rather than right behind the stove. Page 3. So we always put our information. I'm sure other dealers do as well, but if you lose our cards, you push that button and it tells you right who to call to fix your stove. Now, I know when I get some new toys, I like to play around with it. Sometimes you might hit one too many buttons and you want to go back starting from fresh, hit that factory default button, just click yes. The control screen will kind of go through a whole bunch of words and prompts, and then it'll pop back up to that home screen again, and you know everything's reset. This stove does have the option on the side, the right side, there is a USB port. So you would just put your USB in there. If you're computer savvy, then you go on the Harman website. You could get updates for the firmware and you could load it yourself. Just go right into USB. This firmware update would be orange. You'd click on that and it would do everything by itself. Lastly, there is this video manual QR code. If you ever lose your manual or anything that paperwork that came with the stove, it's all right here. On top of the manual, there's the cheat sheet for the touch control. There's also some short videos to help you as far as maintenance, operation, cleanings. So any questions you have beyond the manual, look on that site and they always have some helpful tips and tricks for you. So that is the Harman touch control. There's the XXV, the P series that have these, and the insert, the 52i, and the upcoming 42i, I think it is. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in our next video. This has been Marco with Higgins Energy. Stay warm.